How do you describe a post-apocalyptic world? One where nature has returned to the world and societies are reforming. Would you think there'd be giant machines where hunters would need to work together to take them down and harvest their resources? That's the world Guerilla Games showed us back in 2017 on the PlayStation 4 with the smash hit Horizon Zero Dawn. In 2020, a board game version of that world was introduced. Is the board game as good as the video game? Let's take a look. Hi again, this is Bevan from Know Your Role, and I'm absolutely stoked to review Steamforged Games' adaptation of Horizon Zero Dawn. In Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game, 1 to 4 players can take on the roles of hunters looking to find glory and recognition within the Hunters Guild. Each player comes from one of the 4 main tribes: the Nora, the Karja, the Banuk, and the Oseram. Interestingly, in the base game, 3 of these 4 characters are female. The Oseram is fully armored, so it could go either way. This is similar to the video game, where many of the main characters of the story were female, including the protagonist Aloy. None of the player characters are directly named, so I appreciate this touch of inclusivity. Each player will then start with their character card, 3 starting equipment of 2 weapons and 1 armor, and a set of action cards, of which there are 3 types shown: ammunition, abilities, and interrupts. The character will also have a card showing an upgrade tree, along with several upgrade cards. The game is played over a series of encounters. Each encounter, you set up the board tiles and miniatures according to the quest card that the leader selects. The fledgling, or person in last place, will get to select a power for themselves from the events deck. It's a nice catch-up mechanic to keep everyone invested. On a player's turn, they will have several actions to choose from. They could either move around the board and attack enemy units. The units then respond with their own behaviors depicted on their cards. I really enjoyed how the board game brought in elements from the video game. For example, enemy units will simply follow their patrol route until alerted. Some will try to escape the battlefield rather than fight, but the biggest mechanic from the video game is the ability to tear off components from the enemy units. The choice of going for tearing components or pure damage is very important, because tearing these parts off will affect the enemy's abilities. Certain attacks are lost to the enemy, for example. The encounter is won when the hunter group as a whole earns a certain amount of encounter points. These are earned, of course, by defeating enemies. However, each hunter will also earn glory points for their individual efforts. After an encounter is completed, hunters are assigned blazing, full, and half suns based on the glory earned, and a new leader and new fledgling are determined for the next encounter. Players then get to possibly level up their characters, adding abilities and weapons or other cards to their action deck, and then get to buy new equipment from their action decks from the merchants. Then the next encounter starts, with 5 total played. After the final encounter is done, if the players survived, they all share the victory. But of course, the player with the most sun points is deemed the best of the hunters, and is considered the ultimate winner. So that's a quick overview of Horizon Zero Dawn. But what is the overall verdict? The base game is an enjoyable experience with several of the smaller enemies from the universe here, with the Sawtooth being the game's final enemy to hunt. Mechanics are solid, and I appreciate that each enemy has a unique behavior card that matches what we see them do in the video game. On our first game, for example, my wife and I lost the encounter we first saw the Grazers, as once they were alerted they tried to escape the board, and we ended up not defeating enough enemies to score the required points for a successful mission. This is just like how the video game works. Grazers end up scattering if spooked rather than fight. It was an aha moment where, just like in the video game, Planning rather than brute force was necessary to succeed. Some of the rules are easy to forget. We did have to restart the first encounter in our 4-player game because I forgot the dodge rule, which during the enemy turn, a player is supposed to move after each enemy attack. It prevents all the enemies from simply swarming in and ganging up on one person. Forgetting that meant the first player lost their entire hit point count on the first turn. Not the best way of playing the game. I also found there was a pretty high difficulty spike with 4 players versus 2. The game does account for fewer players by reducing encounter points needed to finish an encounter and the number of enemies that are on the field. But when my wife and I are smashing through enemies in 2-player mode and struggling with every encounter in 4-player, it just feels a little bit off with the balancing. Either that or I keep forgetting that dodge rule. As for game quality, the minis are incredible with amazing details. They look just like their counterparts in the board game. Can't wait to paint them. The cards also have a really nice finish, the artwork pops with color, and there's little subtle things, like the arcs on equipment cards that show which slot they go on around your character card. Those are a nice touch. The rulebook is solid. It explains components first, how to set up the encounters, then player and enemy turns, and just like the cards, the book is filled with great artwork. Though I did have to flip through the book a few times to clarify rules. Like many of this genre of modular minis on the map encounter-based games, the rules make sense when all together, but oftentimes a player will want to do something, and you have to dig in the rulebook to find that one line that says yes or no. The base game also feels a little light in content. There's only one quest deck of encounters here, and it always ends with the Sawtooth as the final boss. I'm really waiting to see those expansions promised for the game, though. Some of the more iconic enemies are going to be coming. The Thunderjaw towering over player miniatures will make the game incredible on the table. I think it's a bit obvious. I have a bit of a bias. I'm a huge fan of the video game. I can't wait for the sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, to come out in 2021. I also can't wait to receive the rest of my all-in Kickstarter pledge for the board game. I think ultimately that is where players will determine how much they want to play the board game. It will be based on how much they know and enjoy the source material in the video game. For me, the board game distills the mechanics of the video game well and translates it into a great experience where 4 friends can go machine hunting for a day, oohing and eyeing over the great miniatures and artwork of characters and enemies they know from the video game. As for people who aren't fans of the Horizon universe, I still think the board game's good to put on the table, but there are so many other themed variable encounter minis on a map game out there. You probably already have one based on your favorite characters from your favorite media, and the base game of Horizon Zero Dawn just feels a bit too light on its own. Then again, maybe you should just go play the video game, fall in love with it, come back and play the board game. It honestly wouldn't be a bad way to spend the time. This is Bevan from Know Your Role. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Thanks again for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts by commenting below. If you liked what you saw and would like to see more, I'd appreciate the gesture of giving me a like and a subscribe. If you have suggestions for future videos, please let me know. And again, thanks for watching. May your table always be graced with a game, and always remember to know your role.